All right, under the sun listeners, we are back at the art and science of coaching. I'm your host, Tim Hall, and I have my co-host, Coach Zach Gregg.
Hey,
Zach,
hey,
welcome back to the show. We ready to get after it?
we are. Absolutely.
Okay, well, today's topic, and we do have a guest. Today's topic is bike fits. Uh, Everything you want to know, need to know about bike fitting. We're going to talk about that today. And we'll get to our guest here in just a second. But Zach, how did we, why are we choosing this topic? We've got a reason, what should be important to everybody. But you yourself, maybe kind of share why it's important to you, what you have going on, and why we're talking about this today.
Right. So this is the time of year that it becomes really important to get a bike fit and start paying attention to the things that maybe you've ignored through your whole racing season because either you didn't have time or you didn't just want to sit down and deal with imbalances or comfort issues or things like that. And for me personally, I've gotten a new time trial bike and a new road bike from the team this year. And the fit is a little bit different. And even though I've transferred it directly from the old bike, it feels different. So on top of things that I maybe have ignored or didn't have time to address last year, I really need to get these new bikes sorted out. And my shoes are falling apart. I've got some custom insoles that I've squashed to the base of the shoe. So it's go time for me on seeing somebody qualified and intelligent to fix me back up, put a little coat of polish on everything.
Yeah, well, it's almost as if when one thing goes south, a lot of other things start going south. And boy, if you don't stay on top of that maintenance, then you can get into some trouble. And so, as we were having these discussions about bike fits, there's only one person that came to mind that we needed to talk to. And our guest today is my good friend back home in Nashville, Coach Todd Nordmeyer of Endeavor Performance. And Todd, welcome to the art and science of coaching. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Zach, for having me on.
All right, so Todd I'll let him explain what all he does at Endeavor Performance, but just to give a little bit of a backdrop of our relationship, Todd is the first coach I ever hired, the only coach I've ever hired, way back. Todd, do you recall when we began working together? Do you remember it all?
I think it was wasn't it at a restaurant? Was it at the restaurant you managed?
Yes, it was. Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Is that when you remember?
Well, I went into Training Peaks the other day, my account, and just kept scrolling. I had to go all the way back to November 2005. 2005 is when I finally stepped up. And you had already talked to me prior to that about working with me, helping me achieve my cycling goals. And I just wasn't in the right place to be able to do it. But around about that time in 2005, if you remember, that was just a few months after I started coaching at Cumberland University. And I was just getting into the profession of coaching and cycling. Mm-hmm. And then finally was in position where I had a little bit more flexibility with my schedule to devote to training. And we met and we started in November 2005. And I went through a lot of workouts and files and races and our back and forth in those. And it's pretty eye-opening, actually. But I want for the listeners to know, you too, Zach, like I would not be a cycling coach without Todd Nordmeyer. It would not have happened. And I was thinking about this on the ride the other day. I remember asking you what you thought about me applying for that coaching job at Cumberland. Mm-hmm. And I just, your influence on me, man, I can't even put it into words. Like there's no way I would be who I am as a coach today if there was no Todd Nordmeyer.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's cool, man.
Well, you have had a pretty deep and lasting effect on many people. whether they tell you that or not. I know you have, because I talk to them and they tell me. And of course, you and I, fortunately, we hit it off and got to be very close friends. And, I was right there with you for a lot of what you were doing in the early parts of Endeavor Performance, when you were just in an office over there at Steps Fitness. I know you remember those days.
Oh, yes.
Well, you've come a long ways. And so share with our listeners, what exactly is Endeavor Performance and what do you do there?
So really, Endeavor Performance is just I guess it's an outreach for me personally. It's what I enjoy to think about, not just the physical bike, but just everything around that. Just camaraderie, the fitness of being fit, or the good feeling of being fit, and just what goes into that. I mean, all the variables that go into having a good performance. I mean, there's a lot of them, and some of them you can control, some of them you can't. And so I would say Endeavor Performance is just that. I mean, it's just me being myself, and luckily, somehow people started wanting to pay me for my input, for my experience, I don't know, just the way that I would say something, I guess. But people would start paying for that. And then it led into me wanting to basically just offer training indoors just for the winter time. And that's what led to the indoor training classes. People would bring their bike in. And at that time, that was, early 2000, 2006, 2007. And there really wasn't much out there in terms of that. I mean, it was obviously brand new concept, was brand new. So that sort of led into me growing 2 classes of 8 people to suddenly 12 classes of 16 people. And that was over a course of, 2 to 3 years. And then at that time too, I was also starting to, people were starting to ask me questions about bicycle adjustments, and of course, being curious and wanting to have the answers for people. I just, I messed up a lot. And then that sort of led into the fitting part. So I'm really just Endeavor Performances again, it's what I'm interested in. And it's led to what I call this performance center. And it's 5,500 square feet. I have, a training room for cycling, a training room for running, a yoga room now, and then of course a fitting room. And it's really just it's a playroom that I tell people it's my playroom. And by some stroke of fortune, people want to be part of it, and they want to pay for my experience, which you can debate if it's expertise.
Oh,
but
it is.
but I mean, yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, some of it is. It's been validated, which is great.
Well, the progression you've gone through with your business, from just that little room at Steps Fitness to being downtown in that one facility, when you went basically from a separate full-time job to leaving that job to opening this business. And now you are off of, I believe, 8th Avenue South?
8th Avenue South, correct.
Down right off the edge of downtown Nashville. Great facility. And I love that word you said about just, playroom. It looks like a playground if you think about it. If you're a cyclist or a runner, or man, you go in there and the vibe is really good. And for anyone who has not been there, you have to see this facility because it's mind blowing. The screens you have for your CompuTrainer Center. I mean, it's a cool place. It's not just going in and pedaling your bike. It is a full experience. And within that, you have a fitting center, which is the heart of our conversation that we want to kind of get to today. And we'll dive into that. But first question I have for you is, and I don't think I had this on the list that I sent you. Do you remember your first bike race?
I do remember.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
It was in Louisville, Kentucky, which is where I grew up. And it was in February. And I would say the year, maybe 1987, way back then. And it was in February, it was raining. And I had just by again, by stroke, I had some athletes or some other friends that were experienced cyclists. And I say experienced back then, everyone started as a Cat 4, but these guys were 3s and they had at least a year of racing experience underneath them. So they took me along, and I didn't have a rain jacket. I didn't have anything really. So we went to go register for this race, and then we went to the bicycle shop and we got a jacket for myself. I mean, these guys felt sorry enough to take me to a bicycle shop for me to buy a jacket. And I had that jacket forever, for a long time, but nonetheless, so we obviously Cat 4, didn't know really what was going on, nervous. It was raining. And at the time, I actually still had toe clips. I didn't have clipless pedals.
Mm.
And so it was a 12-speed bike. So that tells you a little bit of how far back in the day, it was a 12-speed bike. And so we started the race. As a break that got off. I don't know how I got off, but it got off as a group of 4 people. They got away, and we had 3 laps to go. I remember when we were finishing the second lap, my friend, who really is a little bit more experienced than I was at the time, I guess he just thought, you know what? We got to the parking lot, and he stopped at the parking lot and says, "I'm done." And I just gave him hell for that. I said, "No way, we're not done." And of course, I'm just like, whatever. I'm like 17 years old, and yeah, I was just, we're not done. I mean, we're just gonna finish the race. So somehow I get this stroke of it, just exertion, stroke of fury going on me, and I actually bring up the field up to the brake. And I don't know what happened to the brake. I mean, maybe they got tired. I mean, I wasn't like, turned on the nitrous and I got, flying. I mean, I would just said, forget this. I'm just going to go and ride. And we caught up to them. And when we caught up to them, we were going up this hill. I remember this to this day. We were going up this hill, and my foot comes out of my pedal clip.
Oh.
And I get dropped. And so my friend who wanted to quit the race gets in there, and he wins the freaking race.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And he stays in there, and he was ready to quit. So I caught up to the break, and he wins the race. I mean, I'm sitting there. Of course, I finished later on because I got dropped because I couldn't get my foot, my cycling shoe into that toe clip. So that's what I remember most. I mean, that was so funny. And we still talk about it whenever we talk about how crazy that was. I mean, it was just like, it was so cold, but I didn't know any better back then. I still would have, even today, I probably still would have raced it, but yeah, it was miserable, but it was fun. It was so funny.
Well, that's a memorable story. And
Yeah.
I've been asking everyone about their first bike race. And do you remember after that, like, there's something about it that makes us keep coming back?
Mhm.
What was it for you that it lit a fire and you kept coming back?
Yeah, that's a great question. Prior to all that, I mean, I was really, really enamored with bicycles. I mean, I know as all kids, we say that, and that there is some truth to that. I think all kids, not all kids, but a lot of us as children, as guys, boys, love a machine. I just, for as long as I remember, I just loved riding the bike. And the racing part probably did spur some competitiveness that I had in me, that it was there. Though I couldn't really just quantify it, and I couldn't really talk about it then in terms of like, really realizing that's what it was. But it was I don't know, man. It was about going hard, going fast. It was about that, and just something about riding a bike. And I think you couple that with the competitiveness of competitive cycling. I think those were just somehow, those two meshed well with inside me.
Well, you kept at it, and you got to a very high level. And I think we should have you back on this show soon to talk about your story as an athlete and coach, but really athlete, so that all the folks out there really understand your background. And it's been a while since your last race.
It has been, yes.
And I'm pretty sure that your last race, you and I were racing together on the same team, probably. If
Yeah,
memory
I was
serves.
racing on your team, Nashville Cyclist.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll have another show where we talk about that because you have some fantastic stories. We had Christian Foster on the podcast a
Mhm.
while back, and he, of course, spoke a lot about you and your influence and the teams that you all had back in the day. So if anyone's interested, just go to tbra.org and you'll just go through the results and you'll see a lot. You'll see Todd Nordmeyer's name over and over and over again as bike race winner or best area rider of the year award, that sort of thing. And so, yes, experience. You bring a lot to the table for your clients. And I think that's very important for a coach to cultivate over the course of time. And Zach is early in his coaching profession career, and he is absorbing all of this. And that's something I really emphasize with anyone I talk with about coaching or who wants to coach is you use all of these experiences as a racer. You bring that to the table, and then you absorb all the external information you can from more experienced people who have that knowledge and insight in the science, who can teach you, and you just grow from it. And so it's led you to Endeavor Performance and what you're doing, and specifically the past handful of years. I can't remember when you first started doing fits, but it really is it has become, I would say, one of your specialties, don't you think? So what was it? You're doing the Retool system at your facility. I'm curious, why did you choose Retool, and what is it about Retool that you believe makes it unique as opposed to the other fitting systems that are out there?
Yeah. So in 2007, that's when sort of Retool was starting to market themselves. And I think I came across it in a cycling magazine that they had this motion capture piece that was in 3 dimensions. So it's not just captured in 2 dimensions, which is really what a picture or a photograph would be, right? So it was captured in 3 dimensions, which again, it was really fascinating. It was quantifiable. You're quantifying someone's position. And so that was really cool to me. I mean, just to quantify it. And that at that time, it was the only, sort of marketing offered, available to the public system back in 2007. I think the Boulder Center of Performance, they were using their own, and that's actually sort of how all that started, from what I understand. But so at the time, that was the only thing, and I thought, hey, that's something that's cool. And they had a financing, program where you could finance it, just I think over 12 months or something like that, and spread out the payments, because it was like the time was 12 grand, which is really expensive in 2007. But and that I would do it in my basement. I mean, I would have the equipment in my basement. I did not sort of go into any type of education with that, other than the resources they gave me. At the time, there wasn't the World Wide Web as it is now back then. So you just couldn't, go to YouTube and find it. But after that, I think it was 2010, 2011, I went to get certified, the first class that I went to in Boulder to get certified for that. And so that's pretty cool. I mean, there are definitely other systems out there that are 3 dimensions, like Retool. I mean, it's a tool, and it's not necessarily it's a philosophy they go by as much as it's just that it gives, in my opinion, it just gives me as a fitter an opportunity to convey what I see to somebody. So the way that I try to put words to it is like I'm not working in a black box. Um, I work looking at somebody from the side, from left to right side, and just making changes from that. I mean, and they're just taking my word for it. And they still are. Obviously, athletes are, even though I make a change and even they can see a number, they're saying, all right, Todd, I agree with you. That number looks right, I guess, or whatever. but it gives me a number to work within, to talk to a client about. That's the cool thing about it,
Yeah, well,
among other
and
things.
quantifying it, and I think the sport, as a whole, I mean, now we're to the point where we're quantifying our sleep. I mean,
Yeah,
we're quantifying everything, and I think there's a
that's
lot
right.
of good in being able to quantify everything, but you then have to be able to make decisions based on whatever it is that you can quantify. We don't always know if those decisions are the right ones or not, but I think through the experience, we're being guided in the right direction because we can quantify all the things we can. Uh, as it relates to other fit systems, because we get the question from our athletes that we work with, is we try to emphasize bike fits. Zach mentioned earlier about how, this time of year is a good time for people to get those fits if they're going to get them done. Ideally, actually, probably a few months ago, if you're a road racer, where you get properly fit, you're training on a bike that is really set up for you. You're biomechanically where you need to be. You go through all winter of training in the right position and not changing positions, midstream. So as people are looking at this and they're like, well, maybe I should get fit beyond that initial quick fit you get at the shop when you buy your bike, which we all go through that and experience that usually. What are some other fit systems or philosophies that at least people should be aware of? I mean, there's Retul, and then there's a few others. What are some other names at least people, because I feel like athletes should ask that question of
Yeah.
someone who's going to fit them. Hey, what is your philosophy? Where are you deriving this? Is it old school? I mean, you and I know some old school people who are going to use some protractors and a plumb bob. And so, you can do it that way, but what are some other systems out there for people to just be aware of?
Well, yeah, there are other, like, I guess there are other tools that are like sort of holistic in the sense of that they are capturing motion in real time. And, you know, Shimano worked with a company in Netherlands called Bike Fitting. It's bikefitting.com. And they have a 3D motion capture system as well. And they have some tools that wrap around that ability to do that. And there's also there's also a company in Belgium that's called BioRacer, which is really, they got cool stuff. And Zach, you would be interested in that because they legitimately use a green screen, and they have software out there that can measure the frontal area of somebody.
Very cool.
Yeah. So they have tools, they have other tools that wrap around that motion capture. They have, again, they have that green screen where they are measuring, frontal area, which is really good. And then there's one in Italy that's called Velo System. And again, it's just a collection of tools that are meant to help a fitter to properly fit somebody. Now, I think if you go to each one of those, I think you're going to find that they're just saying, hey, our tools are good. They're going to give a fitter this much information, or it's going to make this fitter more accurate in what he or she's doing. But it's not necessarily a philosophy. It's just basically a tool. It's like a wrench. It's a very expensive wrench. It's like a ruler, I guess you can say, better said, a ruler or some type of measurement tool. And so, philosophy for a fitter is really important. I think you can find some common ground amongst, fitters. I think there's different ways to attack it, and there's different ways to find a solution. But it is a good fitter, in my opinion, is somebody who can problem solve, but also really be, I don't know, I wouldn't say empathetic, but more just like understanding of what that person's coming from, and asking questions to find the right answers, and the right answers being helping that athlete understand the pressure or the sensation, the proprioception that person's feeling, and trying to get that person to understand that, because otherwise, if that person will go back to numbers, right? I mean, feeling is the hardest thing to understand for a lot of people. What am I supposed to feel? Or I don't know what I'm feeling. But if you show them a number, they're thinking, okay, that looks great. I agree with you. So that's the hard part of fitting in my experience, is just getting to the point where that person, you understand what that person feels on the bike, and that person has a sense of it too.
Okay, we'll get into the full process. If someone comes to
Okay.
you, back to step 1, step 2, step 5, and 10, that you put a client through, which isn't just, hey, hop on the bike, let's get going. You do some things, assessments prior to that. And we'll get into that for just here in just a minute. But first, speak to what are the benefits of getting a professional bike fit. As a professional bike fitter, when you're talking to people and you're explaining to them, hey, here's why you should do this, what are those benefits?
Yeah, it really comes down to three general categories. I mean, one is comfort, which is a big one. 2 is injury prevention, or I would even say like injury remediation, if there is such an injury that can be, remedied or lessened. And then the third one is performance, which I think is big too. So those are the 3 big ones. And usually an athlete is going to fit in one or more, 1 to 2 to 3 categories of those. A lot of people in my experience just assume that riding a bike is going to draw comfort or create discomfort. And they put up with it, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I just tell people, it's like, it can be better. I mean, there is a way. I believe there's a pursuit to find performance in a fit, to find comfort. I think those 2 things should be considered. To the point of, just any types of aches and pains, any type of stiffness. I mean, of course, being on anything, on a machine like that for hours, is going to create stiffness. But if it's a bad stiffness, in the sense of like, it's like you're hurting yourself, I mean, that
Chronic.
Yeah, exactly. If it's something you feel hours after you ride, and it's not just achiness, it's something else, then that could be addressed. It should be addressed.
Well, those of us who have been through professional fits, we know the value. And it's not cheap. It's not an inexpensive adventure, but I've always tried to sell it as if in a way where if you step back and look at just all of the investment we make in this sport, when it's our equipment, going to races, hiring a coach, I mean, we're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars. And we're on this machine for hours and hours. I mean, Zach is on it for 25, 30 hours or more a week. And yet, hiring someone like you, there is this reluctance to make that final investment to ensure you are properly fitted. We try to overcome that, but it is a problem, isn't it?
It is, and I think it goes to different things, but I think the first thing is that people just they get to a mental acceptance, like it's supposed to be painful. I can work through the pain, or I can develop I can develop just some mental attitude that I can work through the pain or the discomfort. I think there's a lot of that, and there's probably different people that come in that are just uncertain about, like, well, I'm not that serious about it, so maybe I shouldn't have to get fitted. There's a lot of that. At least I see some of that. I mean, of course, at the elite level, you don't necessarily get that, but yeah, but I see a lot of that. People come in, well, I'm not that serious. I don't know if I need to go into the detail that I take it,
If you're not that serious, maybe you shouldn't have spent $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 on your bike to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, you could, yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah.
Well,
That's right.
a thought that's been going through my mind lately, not necessarily related straight to this, but that, to your point, about adapting. Like, the body will adapt. You could be in the wrong position. and the body will adapt. And there will come a point where that fit, even though it adapted to that fit, if you increase the workload, it's going to get exposed. You're going to start to run into problems, be it numbness, soreness, knee problems, low back, reach, shoulders, something. It's finally going to rear its ugly head and maybe cause some problems and discomfort that's even worse. So speak a little bit about what are some of the most common problems you see that a client comes to you and say, I'm having this problem, you know, with this part of my body or this discomfort, or maybe they don't have an ache, but you right away see, oh goodness, you can see right away with your own eyes that we're going to make these adjustments. What are the most common things you see that are in need of correcting?
I think first and foremost, and it all starts with this, is the saddle. You know, if that saddle if it's not comfortable, and that's obviously, we can talk about what levels of comfort there is with the saddle, but if it's causing you to either do the scoop back on the saddle, or if it's causing you to posteriorly rotate your pelvis, and then there's nothing else, whatever else I do to the bike to fit it to you, it's for naught. I mean, it's just because your body is going to try to defend or try to create comfort by moving around and putting itself in a place that might be comfortable for your, you know, for your soft tissue, for your perineum, for, just undercarriage. And when you do that, then other things can start, popping up, and that's hand numbness. It could also cause, obviously some knee discomfort, back discomfort, back tightness, upper neck tightness in the thoracic area, it's cervical area. I mean, to me, it all starts with the saddle. And that's a big place for me to really take someone to, and really have an upfront, honest conversation about it in terms of what they feel from their current saddle. And again, it's me guiding them through that process and trying to ask questions and sort of putting words to what they feel underneath themselves, and see if it is the pressure that I feel like people should feel. So that's, to me, the saddle's huge, especially when you start getting, and you get into a performance aspect, and if you want to get aero, or if you want to increase your performance, I mean, it's all about trying to get a saddle that allows you to anteriorly rotate your pelvis, because you will get lower, and you can stay in that position longer. So that's huge.
And that's not, and when you talk about saddle, you're not just talking about the position of the saddle or where it is actually on the bike, but also just the saddle itself, the size, the length, the width, and on and on.
Yeah, it's the width, it's really the shape. And it's, though the industry tells people and tells, the local bicycle shops to measure the sit bone width, the ischial tuberosity width. I debate that. I mean, it is a starting point, but to me, the only time you're sitting on your ischial tuberosity that you should be is when you're riding a Harley Davidson or you're sitting on a couch. You should have a tilted pelvis forward. Now, some people are more mobile in that area than others, and I get that, but you need to make sure the saddle's not causing that. And that to me is huge. And I don't know. I mean, saddle that, you get saddle pressure mapping systems, those are really cool to have, but I still feel like I can get somebody into a good saddle without having that, or identifying what is wrong with the saddle they have on, that they're using now. So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the shape of the saddle, the way that the saddle is meant to be sat on, that's important to know, because people don't know that. I mean, athletes don't know. I mean, it's not really being told. If you go to a saddle manufacturer's website, I mean, they're not really describing how it should be sat on, and that's okay. But there are positions that saddles just don't need to be sat on. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, and but yeah, it's important to just identify what works for that athlete.
And really what that highlights is how important your hips are for this sport.
Yeah, that's obviously, I mean, it's the cliche, it's where it all, that's where it all starts from, right? It's the hips. I mean, it's those hip extenders, the big muscles that drive the body forward. It's those hip extenders, and those are huge.
Okay,
Many
so
ways,
the
literally and figuratively.
yeah, well, pedal stroke. I mean, once you have that figured out, just starting there from the center, my experience has been, you can drive more power into the pedals. When your hips are balanced, which is a separate issue, really, if you have balanced neutral hips. But in the sport of cycling, the rotation that's necessary to really perform well and drive the pedal stroke is a little bit different than if you're standing and walking. But the hips are all important. Okay, so let's talk about the process of a retool assessment and fit. Okay, let's say a client calls you up and says, all right, Todd, I'd like to get a bike fit. What's that process going to be like, and what should they expect?
Yeah, so for me, it's important for me to just have some understanding of that person and that person's bike. So there is an intake form that I send them via email, and the intake form is very general in the sense of, just give me a sense of what their experience is, any previous injuries, which is really important to know, what their current issues are on the bike, if they have any. Also, just a little bit of information about their bike, saddle, the age of the bike, the age of their shoes. And so I start with that. That's important for me to know, because when they come in, I feel like I don't have to, I feel like I have some rapport with them, and they feel like they have rapport with me when they come in, because there is some sharing of personal information, right? So I think that's good. And I can talk to them. I mean, I can, when they come in, and I can get right to their issues, and not have to feel like I'm starting from ground zero. So that's really important. And I think that, again, that's really, really professional, I think, in the sense of, and I think any good bicycle fitter does that. And so when they come in, I sort of give them a lay of the land, how this is going to work, the steps we're going to take, sort of the major steps. And the first major step for me is to take a look at their body from a neutral standpoint. So neutral being it's unloaded, right? I mean, there's gravity is not acting upon it. So I get them on a table. I look at their flexibility. I look at their foot structure. I try to put their body in neutral positions. For example, their feet subtalar neutral, which is really good, because that's really where the body wants to be. It wants to be neutral. So that's important to know. Like, without gravity, what is that person's body? Where is it? And without any type of forces acting on it. And I think that's really important to understand. And when they get on the bike, you can see what the bike is doing, because obviously it's a fixed system, right? It's a closed kinetic chain. You're clipping in, your hands are on the bars, your butt's on the saddle. So it's like you're forming to a machine. So that's big. I mean, is to understand the body's position in neutral. After that, of course, we get them warmed up on their current bike, on the platform I have here, and just watch them pedal. Don't really say much.
I have a question
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
that physical assessment. Do you find that sometimes you maybe say something and make them aware of something about their body that they didn't realize? That is kind of like, it's like, oh, I didn't know that one side is lower than the other, or
Yeah.
one leg is longer than the other, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there are situations like that. And I mean, yeah, things like that. I mean, as simple as, though though they might not have a leg length discrepancy, but from a functional or structural, whatever the case may be, it's hard to discern that from a visual eye, in my opinion. But and you verify that their hips are not level, and you start asking questions, and usually it's because someone has a 4-foot varus, which means that their foot rolls in, or they pronate, and so that rotates the knee, and that really shortens that leg. In essence, it shortens the leg, so their pelvis moves forward and down. And so just addressing that, and talking to someone about that. Of course, I do offer, I do recommend arch support to everyone, but that's the kind of stuff that people think, okay, yeah, I get it now. That's why, I feel like my pelvis is not level. It's simple things like that. And of course you can read about that. That's not like I just figured that out on my own. It's like, it makes sense. How the body works like that. But yeah, you're right. You identify some things that people are not aware of, or better yet, I'll say something and it resonates with them, and I look like a superhero.
Well, and you just highlighted how that one thing in one aspect of the body has a chain effect, like it reaches other parts of the body. Just because the saddle is out of whack, so to speak, it's going to affect other areas of the body, and vice versa. And so you got to get to that source, and then if you can fix that source, then all these other it'll go up the chain, so to speak, and it will help improve these other aspects of the body. Okay, so all right, you've done the assessment, and then you put them on the bike, and then what?
I do just basically, I have them ride, get them warmed up. I think that's important to get them warmed up. I slowly increase the load on the trainer, so they start feeling, some sense of getting warmed up. And then again, like I said, I look at them. I just go around the whole trainer platform and just take a look at them. And I might ask a question here and there, but I really don't say anything, because I really feel like if I point something out, most people think, well, that's a bad thing, right? Because we all go there. It's the first thing we think about. We never really think about, like, well, he's saying it for a good reason. So anyway, I don't really say much. I just ask questions, and ask it just in an inquisitive way, not in a way that I feel like it's, people, I'm coming to conclusions. So after that, and then that's when the Retul tool comes on into play. So obviously the Retul system is, you place body markers on the body in anatomical positions, and then after that, and then you just I run video cameras. I have 2 video cameras, both left and right, front and back. And then of course the Retul camera is motioning from the lateral sides, both left and right. And after that, I get them off the bike, and we sit down and we have a conversation about what I see and what I think can be changed, what I see could be happening. I also give them, though I think some fitters have a debate about this, I also give them advice on what they can do different in the pedaling mechanics. I think that's very valuable when I feel like something could be said and something would make a difference. And then after that, I'll just make the changes and go through that process to get them on, do some post adjustment video captures, and step them through and show them what I see, the changes.
And you actually show them a before and an after.
I use a software package. I don't use Retul software video capture package, even though it's decent. I feel like I use something that better that I can use, because I can draw lines on it. I can do an overlap, which is really cool. I can overlap the before and after, and you can sort of fade in one and fade in the other one, and you can sort of get a sense of what changes, and you can visually see it. That's really cool stuff. And then we'll get to the point where I feel like, okay, we're at a point where I feel like we're at a good spot, both from my point of view and both from the athlete's point of view, and just talk about, the next step to me would be to talk about, what they should expect after a couple rides, and ensure that they do have a follow-up that is part of their service, and that I will follow up with them, and that a follow-up is really critical. I mean, something might come up that I missed or I created that might not have been good. And so I want that person to come back and feel like, okay, yeah, I need to get it right. And I'll do that as long as it's needed. I think that's really important, is to have that experience and have people feel like, okay, I can come back because it's what Todd wants me to do. And it's really what needs to be done.
Yeah, my experience of the many times I've been in there with you is we go through that process, and I personally, there's the sensations that occur, before you make adjustments, and then there's the feel afterward. And I can always tell a difference. And depending upon if my bike is one I've been on for a while and you've already fit me, or if it's a new bike, invariably you start swapping stuff out. And what are some of those, those adjustments that you're, referring to? What are some of the common ones where you're actually changing equipment? Because a lot of times that's what it takes.
Yeah. So it really, most of the equipment that you're changing is affecting sort of the placement of the contact points, and that being, your butt, the feet, and the hands, right? You're really trying to get all those in a neutral position, as neutral as you can on a trainer for 20, 30 minutes. But the hope is that they can take that neutral position, and it is a true neutral position where they can ride hours in that position. Equipment would be, of course, handlebars, width of the handlebars, the reach of the handlebars, even the drop of the handlebar. So those are all dimensions of the handlebar that are really considered, in my point of view. Stem length, stem rise, those are all, again, that's dimensions that affect the reach of the person, and also just really the back angle. And then, of course, the saddle, like I mentioned, I mean, that's a big one to swap out. And then I would say C-post, even to pedals and cleats. Those are all the things that need to be considered, and they are considered. They should, all those pieces should be considered.
And if you get right down to it, I don't know that there's a real way to merge what you do with someone buying a bike, a new bike. You really would want to know all of those things before you buy the bike to get the right size of width handlebars, or the length of stem. And of course, that just doesn't happen. Most people go into a shop and they get what's on the shelf, and then they have to make these adjustments afterward. And oftentimes it's not in the shop that they're making these adjustments. And so and I want to get into some specific topics and pinpoint a few aspects. We've already talked about saddle height, and of course saddle being one of them, but I want to talk about some other aspects with it. But let's go maybe speak a little bit about what are some considerations that someone buying a bike should be looking at. Because a lot of times people simply look at frame size, which of course is important, but then there's no consideration given to to reach, to bar width, to crank length, to all the other aspects that are going to also greatly affect how you actually fit on that bike. What should people be really paying close attention to before throwing down $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is, that's a hard one. It's a hard one to answer for someone that doing it themselves. I feel like, not that there's anything wrong with this, but if I retail bikes, and I retail certain brands, I mean, I would try to sell, that one of the bikes I purchased to that person. I just personally believe that not all brands work for a person. I mean, and you can make an argument. Some people can make an argument that, well, it's not gonna make that much of a difference. But I feel like it does, and that's my pursuit. There is a difference there. There's a difference between one brand because of the geometry versus another brand. And so I offer a service where they come in and it's a sizing service, and I have a size cycle. Retul makes one. It's called the Move, and it allows me to basically delve into any model, any brand, any size of a brand that I can make that size to that, make that bike to that size. And that's really important because it helps me to help that person decide, okay, these are the brands that are going to be best for you. Now, when we talk about size, I'm also considering the purpose of so the ambition of the athlete, and what that bike's philosophy is meant to do, or that model's philosophy is meant to do, like a Madone versus a Monda versus a Damani. I mean, those are suiting a certain market, right? So I keep that in consideration. And then I also go down even a little bit deeper than that. And I talk about the actual dimensions of the frame. And that's a little bit of personal endeavor that I have. I went to frame building school to become a frame builder, but there's geometries affect the handling of the bike and the stability of the bike and or the sense of stability of the bike. And that's important to convey that to that athlete. So I take all those into consideration, and I just give that information to that athlete.
Well, that's good to know, because I wasn't aware you had that tool and that feature,
Yeah.
that pre-buy opportunity. That makes complete sense to me.
And it's an unbiased opinion about what brand works for them. And some people get that. Some people want that, right? Some people want not to be told, hey, this is the brand for you, because that's the only brand that they sell. And again, there maybe 70% of the time it's fine, but there are some people out there that you maybe shouldn't be riding a Trek, or maybe shouldn't be riding a Specialized, because there is something better out there. Not that that's bad, but maybe there's just something better out there, and let's look for that.
Well, there's a mental conditioning coach I follow, and you alluded to this earlier, that this statement he says, I think, applies, which is, you don't have to be sick to get better.
Yeah.
You think about that, you can apply that in so many different ways. Things might be good, but they could be better.
Yeah. That's right. That's true. I mean, it is. And I think that's probably a lot of just overriding philosophy for myself personally is, yeah. My brother and I, we played foosball competitively. Long story, short story, long
Now
way to
you
talk about.
you have to talk about this now.
Yeah. So we played. I mean, my brother was a lot better than I was at a lot of things, and that was one of those. And in foosball, lexicon, I mean, you talk about, pulling the ball, topping the ball, footing the ball, and you push the ball. Where my pull of the ball was like, it was fast. I mean, it was very, really fast. It was pretty good. But if I relied on that, which I never really did, I mean, we would probably have done better. But I always tried to think, all right, how else can I move this ball around? How else can I be better? But anyway, that's just what I think about, like, the good, the enemy of great is good, right? That old cliche. But yeah, and that's basically how I am with my fitting. It's like there's information to learn out there, not just from the experience, but also just reading. So yeah, you're right on, man. And I think obviously I that's one of the reasons why you and I, are friends the way we are, because you also have that mindset.
Zach, I know you have some things that you wanted to follow up with him on. Yeah, take over.
Right. Well, yeah, and having that retool bike is an excellent tool. Even being an athlete that works with a specific bike brand, we don't get the option really.
Sure.
It's more of you get to choose your own size, but even that is something that has implications for basically the entire time you're riding the bike. So obviously through this conversation, people can see the importance of building a relationship with someone very knowledgeable in bike fitting, so that they can consult you or whoever it is before they, even in my situation, just select the size of the bike. because you really hate to see it sometimes with these folks who are, super tall and lanky, who are on a size medium with 140 stem. And you're just like, man, why? You don't need, and, then that affects their handling or whatever it is down the line. So, for myself, I'm 5'8". I have short legs, which is great if you're a time trialist. I'm 2 feet off the ground in my time trial position. But a lot of bikes that I've been on come stocked with very long crank arms. So, what is your approach for finding the correct crank arm length, particularly, for some of the shorter riders?
That's a great question, Zach. I would say it's a lot of things. One, it is, I guess it's a judgment call when it comes down to it, but because there's always debates about how to find that out for that person.
Mm-hmm.
The trend, as you probably well know, is to go shorter. And I see that there is a lot of upside with that, for certain reasons. Now, I think that if you're a sprinter in a criterium and that's what you excelled in, I think a longer crank arm might be better. I say longer, not like you want to go 175 if you're 5'6", anything like that. But you don't want to try to go shorter. And I think there is, most people, I would say, I don't know. I think it's a judgment call, but I would say the way that I would guide that is, most women, and not that, again, most women, an average height woman would be, 165, even 160 to 170. Some manufacturers, as you well know, make 167 and a half, but Shimano does not, and SRAM doesn't. But yeah, so that, and then most men, it all depends. I mean, if it's triathlete and we're fitting an aero bike, I'm going to talk them hard and heavy about going shorter crank arm lengths.
Right.
I just really believe there's a big reason for that. And even for time trialists, I think there's a reason for that. I mean, you can make a great arm to go shorter and I don't know. I mean, I think where's the point where you're going too short? I don't know if we know the answer yet.
Mm-hmm.
At least I don't. I mean, to take someone down to your height to 160, or even 155. Yeah, that would be interesting to find out. I don't think it would hurt you, but I think if trying to sprint, it would hurt. But just steady state efforts in aero position, yeah, I don't see any reason not to go that short. I don't know if that helps you out or answers your question.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. That's cool. And so talking about, somebody who is a sprinter or a time trialist, what are some considerations based on either their phenotype, what kind of rider they think they are, or what kind of rider they want to be? What considerations for bike fit should they be thinking about?
Yeah. The way I consider it is, a lot of it is the flexibility of the pelvis,
Mm-hmm.
and even in the torso, you want to consider all that. But the big thing I feel like for sprinters, in my opinion, is a forward position. And I'm not talking about putting it forward in an aero position like you would put somebody in an aero position, but being more forward than back. I feel like that is it's gonna accelerate the bike faster. You're gonna feel like you can accelerate the bike faster. When you stand up, you're already over the pedals, right? And it's only going to get quicker over the pedals if you're more forward over the pedals. So I think in sprinters and even a criterium racer, I think being more forward is a good thing in those aspects. And of course, in aero bikes, I think being forward is obviously good. And, I think also too, just getting a sense of that person's pelvic, mobility is really critical to understand, and then making decisions based on that. And really what it comes down to is the position of the cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
I know I'm sorry to interrupt, but I remember when I first moved here to the mountains, and I believe at the same time I had just gotten a new bike. And you set me up differently for that than you did back when I was living in Middle Tennessee and rolling hills. And you put me in a more of a climber position, even though I'm not a climber. but the bulk of my riding was going to be climbing. I distinctly remember you saying, explaining to me, look, I'm gonna make these adjustments, and you're going to be able to climb a little bit better. You're going to be able to get more out of the pedal stroke. You're going to be drive more, and I remember it feeling different, and also, yes, climbing better than if I had stayed in that rolling road race or more forward criterium-ish kind of position.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, it's real, right? I mean, that those changes are definitely real in the sense of they are effective, and really, it all comes down to obviously it comes down to comfort, but it also comes down to your cadence drops when you're climbing. We all know that for the most part. And if you're trying to produce the same amount of watts and your cadence drops, that means you got to apply more force to the pedals. And force is a product of torque. And if you are just a little bit further behind the pedal spindle in terms of you being your hips and your knee, then you are going to, your moment arm is effectively, your body's moment arm is increased a little bit. So you can get that torque. Now there's a cost to that, because the further you are behind the pedal spindle, you are, you can't produce that same cadence, right? A fast cadence. But again, that's why in crit racing, or that you need to be a little bit more forward, because you are going to be more into the drops of the bars, right? So you are going to be more in a flex position. So you do need a little bit more forward position, so you don't get that impingement in your hips. And you don't really need torque so much because your cadence is higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it does. It
Yeah.
does. And maybe Zach, you could speak to this about what your experience has been living here. But mine has been, even on the climbing that we have, our goal is that we want that higher cadence, because it's, you need a good aerobic engine to be able to really pull this off. But I still find myself sitting a little more farther forward on the saddle up the climbs, and not so much. That's me personal. I feel more comfortable that way, and I'm able to get on top of the gear and continue to have a really good cadence where I need it. I'm still on standard gearing, so I've held out.
Old school.
Yeah, I've held out. I just have a bigger sprocket in the back. And it's working for me. As opposed to setting farther back on the saddle and sort of, getting behind the spindle and pushing and using the force that way. I don't know, Zach, what you have noticed with yourself since moving here. At least that's how I've been doing it.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the grade of the climb. Being from Roanoke originally, I think the only difference really being here is that the climbs are longer. So yeah, definitely. I think the harder I'm pushing, the more forward I kind of slide on the saddle. And it is, especially on some of the longer, steeper climbs, it's tough to stay relaxed around here. You do end up, I'm on standard gearing too. Tim's got a 30 in the back though. I've only got a 28. So, he's got the easy gear.
There is nothing easy about riding with you. I need a 32 probably to help me.
I think we both do. Yeah. But definitely, those high torque moments in the mountains are a lot different than, living in Texas, for example. At the end of a 4 or 5 hour endurance ride, the level of fatigue and the overall feeling is totally different. Even if your watts are the same and all of the metrics are identical, it's a totally different feeling. And so, talking about that a little bit and how it relates to the torque and the lever moment, are you taking in to consideration those things with cleat position? Because obviously your foot is another lever.
And yet, there's been, and given your background, Zach, you might be just, privy of this, but there's been some studies out there. I think there's one done in 2007 about cleat positioning, more on the midfoot, and seeing if there's actually performance difference in economy. And as far as I'm aware, from what I've read, there isn't a sense of economy or no increase in economy, aerobic economy. So you're not gaining anything from what I understand where the cleat is. But with that said, I think that it does. I mean, when you put a cleat further back on your foot, it takes your calf muscle, your soleus muscle is not, they're not activated. They're not in, because they are in support. They support that heel from dropping. And if you put that cleat further towards the toes, then those muscles, that muscle group you have to basically create more tension to support that longer arm. So there's some upside on that by pushing the cleat further back on your foot. But as far as I understand, I mean, you're not gaining anything other than that. And you do gain a proprioception, which I think is really important. But just the feeling you get when you are pushing on the pedals, you push more, you just feel like you're more directly involved in the push, though you might not produce as much or the same amount than you would if it was on your toes, but you are doing it in a different way and from a muscular standpoint.
So then, yeah, cleat position is more of comfort and support instead of trying to.
Yeah, it is more of that. Now, I mean, there's a German guy out there. I think his name is Gust. I can't say his name right. Gust Hein, where he is all about putting that cleat right on the midfoot. Okay. I mean, he's got his own shoes. He's got his own little adapter system where if you go to his website, he's big into that. Big and like that cleat needs to go right in the middle of the arch.
Right.
And so we're almost getting into the realm of debating flat pedals or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. So anyway, the point is that, I think for him, he's probably pushing that more towards triathletes. Again, I think what it's doing is it's taking the hamstring, it's taking the soleus and the gastrocnemius muscles. It's taking that away from the supporting of that, because that's all it does. I mean, it doesn't, your calf muscle doesn't do anything in the propulsion of your bike. It's all in a supporting role. And so if you can remove that, then I can see how it could save your muscles from that into the run. So I can see there might be some anecdotal evidence that, hey, that works, but maybe it works for everyone.
And that midfoot position you're talking about is not something that a normal person could achieve by pushing their cleat all the way back.
No, you would need to either, personally alter your shoes or buy the shoes that he sells, or get the adapters that he has to get that underneath your arch. Mm-hmm. I've never tried it. I mean, it would be interesting, but because people come like what Tim was saying about the platform pedal. I mean, yeah, you see people come in here and without any type of lock-in system, and they're pedaling in their midfoot. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, maybe we got to sign Tim up for a triathlon on flat pedals and just see what his time is, right?
We
sign
him
up for
two.
That. Yeah. One with midfoot and one with forefoot position.
He doesn't need a swim cap.
Yeah.
No, that would be the death of me. That would be the death of me.
Not to hide that hair. Yeah. You don't need a swim cap, man. You're already super aerodynamic through the water, hydrodynamic.
Oh, yeah. All right. So let's suppose someone who, I don't know if this is even a valid question, because, we're going to encourage athletes to, seek someone like you out to get that professional fit and have it done. But let's say someone just either won't do it, or maybe they can't afford to do it. Because this is not a cheap endeavor. I mean, it is expensive, if you think about it, and it takes you invest about 2 hours or more of your time.
It's 2 to 3 hours. Yeah. It's 2 to 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, it's not outrageously expensive, but it's not one of those things where you just plop down $20 or $30. I mean, you're making a big investment as a coach, bringing a lot of experience and expertise to the table, and it's well worth it, because we're talking about $200 to $300, for a fit. That sounds like a ton of money up front, but when you go through it, it more than pays for itself, in my personal opinion. And I think it's worth making that investment, but not everyone's going to make that decision. So what are just some general tips maybe you could give to someone who is not going to take that step? They're just not ready for it. At what should they really be paying close attention to? I mean, we've talked about all these little things, but what is it that they can do for themselves maybe to help put them in the right position? Or also things that they should just be careful about tinkering with? Because cyclists, they love to tinker. Saddle height, moving the
Mhm.
saddle, they love to just tinker. What are some considerations for maybe those two groups of people?
I think, and I sort of went to this early on, is the saddle, and just being honest with what you feel. I mean, if there's any type of pressure in the soft tissue that you get that is uncomfortable, women and men. I mean, it's soft tissue for a reason, right? It's not meant to be like, it's not going to get any harder. I mean, that's why they call it soft tissue. And so this, being honest with that, and then making the decision like, okay, this saddle is not going to work for me. This saddle is not working for me. And then just pursuing a different saddle. And there are some good manufacturers out there that I've done well with. ISM is a good brand. It's based in Tampa, Florida. There's also Sealy Italia, which is they make some good saddles that I've had success with. John Cobb, Speed and Comfort. He has a couple of good saddles that I've done well with. And when I say done well, it's not that I've like made money on done well. It's more like people like, okay, Todd, this is what you're talking about. I feel what you're talking about in a good way. That to me is number one, because again, if that isn't right, then if I tell them to move their hoods up or down, or I ask them, or if I recommend that they raise their saddle height, to lower their saddle height, or raise their bar up, I mean, you might be doing it for the wrong reasons. And this probably because you're probably pushing yourself back on the saddle, or you're tilting your pelvis back to get that pressure off the soft tissue and more onto the sit bones. And then again, that messes everything up. I mean, it messes how the bike handles. It messes your confidence on how the bike handles. Of course, your back starts bothering you and your neck starts bothering you. Your hands can go numb. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is, again, this is to be honest with yourself, is to ask your question about your shoes. In my opinion, what I recommend is that shoes go bad, and it's usually the heel cup of the shoe that is bad. It's not the carbon. The carbon's going to be there forever, right? It's going to stay stiff unless you break it. It's going to stay stiff for long after we die. It's going to be there, but the actual upper sole and the heel cup, those get worn out like they do in running shoes or walking shoes. And if that gets bad, and usually it does, I usually say to replace shoes every 2 years. And Zach, I don't know how old, you mentioned your shoes early on. Those probably are older than 2 years, I bet.
Oh no, I'm brutal on my stuff. It's mainly because
Yeah.
of all the crashing that I do.
Yeah.
Not by choice, obviously, but yeah, I think these are about 18 months old. And
Okay.
all the rough weather condition riding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can see now that you say, this is why we have these conversations, right? About just speaking to the heel cup. I
Yeah.
noticed it taking my shoes off the other day, is that it is a little smashed and a little flimsy
It
compared to
is.
what I
Yeah. That's what
remember.
happens to a
Yeah.
lot of shoes. And so again, what does that happen? Why is that bad? Well, again, cycling and fitting is about supporting. It's about support. Your body, it needs to be supported well. And if your heel cup is worn out of that shoe, your heel's it's gonna move a little bit. There's excessive motion in that heel that your body has to say, okay, I got to support that movement. And you're going back and forth. It's activating muscles, which at some point are going to say, I've had enough. I've had enough. I give up. And then that's
Mhm.
when you get into trouble, either a cramp or an injury. But I mean, injuries, that's a stretch, but it can happen.
Sure.
So there's one part of the shoe is the heel cup. But more importantly, even if it's a new shoe, the thing I find people with is that it's the width of the shoe that gets them in trouble. And usually it's the width of the shoe in the toe box. If it's just remotely tight where it's squeezing the width of the shoe, even when you just put it on, you're going to find yourself having some toe numbness or foot numbness or that hot feet. Regardless of where you put the cleat, that's the number one killer is the width of that shoe. You know, it's not comforting enough. You don't want a big giant gap. You don't want a lot of room, but you want some room in that shoe. And that's huge. I mean, to have that and say, man, I just bought this $200 pair shoes, and Todd just tell me that I need to buy a new pair. Yeah, I probably am. If you're having that discomfort, it's not going to go away. That's why more people feel it in the wintertime, is because your feet probably do swell up a little bit more. And they feel that pressure from the width of that shoe. And it's real. So those two things are big.
I think we could probably have one show just talking about shoes and shoe technology and different types of shoes. And if there's one product aside from maybe the bike to buy at a store, at a shop, probably the shoes would be one of them if they do size you properly, and as opposed to buying it online and say, oh, well, I'm normally this size. And width really matters, because I have been sized up in a shop and for new shoes, and the comfort and fit ultimately be better because we identified it on the front end instead of ordering it online, and then you just make do. Like, man, I've invested this money.
Exactly. There's that, and we're all guilty of that, right? I mean, but hopefully just talking about it in this format, and people who listen to it, they might think, yeah, okay, maybe I do need to look at that, because again, I've had athletes that say it's just to the point where they have to get off their bike, and I mean, it some of the discomfort, you have to get off your bike, and it's it's like wearing a pair of jeans. If they're not comfortable, you're not going to wear the jeans. If you're not comfortable on your bike, more likely you're not going to ride your bike.
Right.
Yeah. Very true. Well, it's always an eye opener. I can remember when I bought my first racing bike. I remember it was the fall of 1997, and I'm finally buying a real bike, and I'm just thinking I'm just going to have to buy a bike. And I hadn't thought of any of all these other accessories that I also needed in conjunction with the bike. And I thought, well, the bike was pretty high sticker price, and it's like, oh, well, you also need these pedals, and you need these shoes, and you need this helmet, and you need these clothes. And it was an eye-opening experience. And now you get to this point, you and us and others, and you start to drill down even more. It's like, I go back to my original statement about, you're already investing thousands of dollars in that actual machine. If you're going to go through that, why would you not drill down to your shoes or any other thing and get it right? Because it's going to go to the heart of what you just said, Todd, about you're going to be more pumped to get on your bike if you know it's going to be a fun experience. Because if it's not, you're not going to ride that bike.
Yeah, and again, I think there's levels of that, right? In terms of people's ability to work through the discomfort, and people accept it. I think that, but you're right. I mean, again, I think talking about it, it might resonate with people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. So one final thing that we can talk about, and there may not even be anything there with this question, but I'm just kind of curious. What do you foresee within the future of bike fitting? What are going to be more changes coming in technology, or the process, or the knowledge, or the research? I mean, what are you already seeing out there? What are you anticipating? What is on the horizon?
And some of it's out there now. I'm sure you've heard of the Leomo product. The Type S system, where they have 5 accelerometers they put on your body, and you can sort of get that information in real time, which is really cool. They also have like a nice camera system with that that a fitters can use. I've considered that. I probably will eventually, look into that. It's not that really expensive. I just find that, and it's one of those things there's a lot of information it gets from it, but you don't know what to do with it yet. And you don't know what really makes a difference. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it will eventually get to the point where we're going to find what's important. So yeah, I see that happening more. So we're going to have more access to things either in shoes, and maybe they come in shoes already you get like Trek has their cadence and speed sensor already in their bike, right? It's already in their frame. I can see shoes having that accelerometer because it's very small. It's in your phone, inside shoes, and having that input into your Garmin. And it tells you, hey, this is how much this is your dead spot. How many seconds is your dead spot? I can see that happening. Again, eventually you're going to have somebody, just understand the information that's coming from that. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there is this guy in Canada. His name's Andrew. I can't remember Andrew's last name. I just talked to him last week, but he's created a virtual wind tunnel. And so basically what you do is, it's called Stac, STAC. And it is, so you take a camera, you take a new iPhone, and you take a 360-degree video of an aero position, and you send it to him, and he will tell you your CDA. He'll give you like alternate positions and tell you the increase or decrease in CDA.
Wow.
Zach,
it's really cool stuff.
Zach is going to geek out.
Yeah, you should look into it. So your conversation you had with Heath and the wind tunnel stuff, that's really cool. But obviously not everyone has access to that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have this ability to do this kind of stuff where you can have a virtual. So to answer your question, what do I see in the future? It's going to be a lot of virtual stuff, man. We're going to virtualize freaking everything, right? You can, create this virtual, world where you're feeling wind, or at least not feeling it, but you're experiencing wind, and it's calculating, just the drag based on your position. I mean, that kind of stuff it's going to come to light soon. I mean, I say soon, maybe 5 years, 10 years. So I think you're going to see a lot of stuff that's coming out of the fit room more like outside, right? More like real time data capturing and making decisions based on that. The other thing that I see in terms of bike fitting, and this gets more into the industry, is I just feel like 3D printing it's going to take off in the cycling industry. It's going to, there's going to be a day where I can go back in my back and print print a saddle for somebody that's unique. It's only a matter of time. I mean, it's like, who has the most money to buy a printer and print a 3D saddle? I mean, Specialized is doing that now,
Mm-hmm.
but to do it in-house, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, it's going to come to the point where you can build bikes in a day, fabricate bicycle frames in a day, I believe, with 3D printing. So all that to say is that if someone comes in and they want to get a custom bike and it's going to fit them well, I mean, yeah, I can go in the back and build one. Just give me a day.
And we're all going to be back on titanium bikes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all going to be titanium, and you're going to see through it, right? It's all going to be like a little honeycomb weave stuff, because you don't need all that metal. So yeah, those are the things I see coming out. Real time data capture, not just in the fit room. Everyone's going to want a saddle, customized saddle, which is fine. It's going to get to that where you can get that within a day or two, right? I mean, of course, all that virtual stuff is going to. I mean, it's only going to get stronger and more powerful. And not have to, go to, a real live wind tunnel. I mean, just do it at home, or have come to a fitter and have that done. I know there are some fitters that do that now.
Well, it's coming. I think those are all really good, great ideas. And yeah, if we can think it, if we can dream it and imagine it, it can definitely come true. And it seems nowadays, the old school mentality, you could still certainly get by and achieve a lot and be successful using old school methods, but more and more people are more open to adopting modern techniques, even some techniques that are ahead of modernity, that are ahead of its time. And more people are receptive to those things these days. When we're talking about virtual reality and 3D printing and other things like that. 15 years ago, probably not. Very skeptical of these things, but now it seems there's more openness to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think then I mean that's going to be, all that stuff's going to be available to someone, right? But then you get into this concept of comfort, and that is very individualistic, right? So even though that you have all these specialty tools and the things that that create virtual in a virtual sense, they can't. I don't know. I don't think you can artificially either decrease or increase comfort. So that has to be like a conversation. So that's going to be there for a long time in terms of someone helping someone decipher their level of comfort, take the guesswork out.
Well, you have definitely helped us take a lot of the guesswork out, and our listeners, you've shared a lot of really valuable insight about what you do at Endeavor Performance and the significance and importance of a professional bike fit. I mean, I know the value, and so does Zach, and not everyone else out there maybe understands, but after you experience it, it then gets revealed to you just how important it is to enjoy the sport more. And that's what we're in it for, is to enjoy the sport and have fun. And this is one more way to add value to that. Well, Todd, man, thank you for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate you sharing all that. What's the best way for people to follow you, to get in touch with you, website, things of that nature?
Yes, of course. The website is Endeavor Performance, and that's ENDEAVOR performance.com. Then Instagram, it's Endeavor Perform. And then, of course, Facebook is a good one too. So that's Endeavor Performance. All my contact information is going to be all there, so they can get a hold of me there. I usually work by appointments, obviously, with the fitting. And we do obviously have training sessions here, so that's always those are on the website as well.
Yeah, and you can sign up through the website for these things.
Yes, you can register for the classes as well as book an appointment on the website.
All right. Well, Zach and I both are in need of probably booking an appointment with you. We've got some needs that need to be addressed. So we'll probably hopefully get to see you soon, get to catch up, and want to have you back on this show to tell your story, your racing history and things that you've been through, because you've got a lot of insight to share with folks as an athlete and as a coach in general. Man, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I just appreciate you and our friendship.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, I appreciate your opportunity to be on here, and I do appreciate your friendship, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for you. So thanks a lot. Thanks for being on the show.
Yep.